Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Save $100 on the Craftsman V20 6-tool Power Tool Combo Kit, now at $199. No matter what the project is, Craftsman's high-quality, high-performance products empower you to build on. Stop by your nearest Lowe's store and check out the full line of Craftsman tools today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Welcome to the Backpacking and Blisters podcast, brought to you by the best quilt makers for ultralight backpackers in light and equipment. With me today is Ben McAuliffe. How's it going, my friend?
It's going good. I was listening to a recent podcast, not ours, but I won't say who. We don't need to do all that. But I had a question for you. If you had a month off and like unlimited funds, but you had to do a camper van, where would you go in the U.S.? Like anywhere, like you got to start where you're at right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably go north into Montana. I got to go U.S. Yeah, I'd probably do kind of like a northwestern tour through California, through the Southwest, and back up and around, and try to hit as many trails as I could. Where would you go?
I'd probably go down south. Like I think, I've never been to South America, so that always does it. I don't know how I'd go through the, Panama Canal. I know that there's ways, but, it'd be tricky. But, yeah,
right.
So just for the record, you would just kind of stay around home.
The question was, like, where in America would you go? And yours was South America. Is that correct?
Well, I meant, like, I worded it wrong. I'm sorry. I meant, like, unlimited funds anywhere in, like, North America because you're driving, right? And you have unlimited funds. And yours was, like, home. But maybe I just worded it wrong. I'll try to get better at my questions.
I'd go to the Midwest. They have friendly people out there. I'd go to the South. I've been to Texas, and that's in Florida. I think that's it. So
yeah,
that's funny.
Somebody's screaming at the radio right now, like, you have unlimited funds. You're gonna get a jet, load your camper van in the jet, and you can go anywhere in the world.
Yeah, there you
go. Come on.
Yeah, that's funny. We've talked about doing that we did that around the South Island of New Zealand. It was a lot of fun when our kids were a lot younger. But
oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of planning trips that may or may not include limited funds, we've got all the tips for how to trip plan from the pros. These are people that a lot of you trust with advice about gear and other things, and now they're going to give you trip planning advice. Do you actually trust them? Ben, do you trust these guys?
I do. They say they're experts.
I don't know if I trust all of them.
You just okay.
We're gonna go through them and we're gonna judge their comments. But basically, we asked a bonus question with all of our guests we've had on the last few months, and we just kind of compiled them into this episode. And this is what they're gonna talk about. So we'll see if they have some good stuff or questionable stuff or Captain Obvious stuff. So that's kind of where we're going, right?
Right. I'm excited. Some good advice. You be the judge, though.
Yeah. And special note on this is that you're going to hear us posing the questions or reacting, Ben and I, but there's some Derek episodes in there too, so Derek's part of this episode as well. Ben, you get the Bible verse of the episode?
I do. Proverbs 15:22. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. Would you agree that the more advisors you've had, the better the plans?
Sometimes. Depends on who the advisors are, right?
Right. And I mean, sometimes you get too many advice and they're all over the place,
Right.
So I guess it just depends.
The best advice is typically like websites from people that have done this kind of stuff before.
Google AI, I thought is where you were going. Like, best advice.
So the first trip I really planned where I had never been anywhere close to that was Glacier National Park. I'd never been anywhere up there. I didn't know how permits worked. I didn't know how anything, the trails, scenery, any of that stuff. And I found a website that had all that information and it ended up being an epic trip. So that's why I kind of trust them.
Nice.
Is that an advisor or website? It kind of is, right?
Yeah. Well, somebody wrote it, right? Like an advisor wrote it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of advisors in your life, Ben?
I got a couple mentors, typically elderly people that help and guide and disciple.
Not older, not seasoned.
No.
They're elderly.
Elderly. I want to make sure everyone knows that it's elderly. And if you're wondering what elderly is to me, it's anyone above 42 years of age. So.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I guess I qualify. Yeah, I need more of those people in my life. I'll be honest. I'm always looking for the sage advice, and there's not as many out there as you think.
Right.
I'll just say that.
I mean, does one bad advice stick out to you that like you were doing something and someone's like, you should do this, and it was like the worst advice ever?
Yeah, I don't want to throw that person under the bus on the podcast, but yeah, there's somebody in my life who, like, their advice is consistently lacking in integrity is the issue. So, and you could probably make the case that we do that sometimes on the show, so I don't know how judgmental I want to be here, but yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, good question, man.
That's funny.
Do you have that person too?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, we had one. We were going for some counseling, just a little checkup with well, now we're getting personal. So marital counseling. One guy was like, "Hey, just make more money and all your problems go away." And I think that was probably some of the worst advice we got. Was like,
wait, that was his answer. Like, really, what it boils down to is, Ben, you're not making enough money.
Right. So make more, and your problems will succeed. And to me, I was like, I don't know if that's the best advice right now. So. Yeah.
Please support us on Patreon if you want to help Ben's problems go away. How about that? Oh my gosh.
Wow. All right.
Let's get to it, man. We got sound bites from these different experts, and we're gonna kind of pop them on there. What's their advice? What is their best trip planning tip? And then you and I are gonna react. So let's start off with Justin Outdoors. So Justin, what is your best trip planning tip you've got for folks out there?
What I came up with was like having a list to bring with, like to have that you check things off of, so that you don't forget things. Because that's what I used to forget things. There's a time there when, especially when my wife was pregnant and like we had our baby, I was forgetting things like every single trip, and I started using my checklist more. Just like you can either use it like something like Apple Notes or like Google Keep, or like I use Pack Wizard. There's like a checklist feature. You just go through, check things off as you pack it, and then you can double check it afterwards. And since I've started doing that, I haven't forgotten anything. And like things like little things like spoon, trowel, toilet paper, like things that like aren't gonna ruin it, like completely ruin a trip, but are gonna make the trip a little bit less comfortable.
Wait, so like a gear list, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Derek, what happens if we do, like, if we don't have a gear list for somebody new going on a backpacking trip? What happened, like, in your experience?
If we don't have a gear list?
Yeah, like back in your early days.
Oh, back in my early days, we don't have a gear list. They bring fanny packs and not a backpack.
Correct.
Yeah, correct.
Nice.
And they survived, and they were awesome.
So Pack Wizard does it have like a generic gear list you can kind of add to, subtract from?
Yeah, so I made one just like for myself that I've shared on my channel a couple times. If you want, I can send it over, and you can just like convert to checklist, and then it just adds little boxes next to all the items. For like, it has everything from like your tent, pack, clothing items, and basically everything.
Wow.
Everything you need, and you can share that around.
Yeah, we'll have to change grams to pounds though, and all that.
So it does that as well. So you just do convert to imperial, and then it changes all the. But the general checklist doesn't have any weights.
Okay. Lucky for Carl, you know what I mean?
Right.
Lucky for Carl.
Does it have sleeping pad inflator? Is that one of the items on the list?
It probably is. I'd have to double check, but
Okay.
I haven't forgotten a sleeping pad inflator in weeks.
The name of it's Pack Wizard. Wizard.
Pack Wizard, yeah.
Like, his advice is have a gear list so you can like check it off. What do you think about that?
I think that's pretty basic, right? I mean, I don't know I honestly don't know anyone that went on a trip and didn't have a gear list, at least mentally. So it's good advice, but is
that's not what he's saying.
Yeah, it is. It's a gear list.
List.
I mean, you have a gear list mentally. Like, you're like, I bring sleeping bag, this. I mean, everybody has a gear list, whether it's written down or in their head, right? I tend to put it in my head and then write it down for like, the stuff that I'm like, oh yeah, I need to make sure I get this, like kind of the specialty items. I'm not going to write down sleeping bag, backpack, sleeping pad.
Why not? You got to cross them off, man. I've had people forget that stuff.
Well, I mean, Derek has.
All of those things.
It makes sense.
All of those things have been forgotten.
Right.
Backpack included.
Show up without a backpack.
Yes.
With all your
yes,
gear.
This has been part of our podcast lore for years. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think that you have to have everything included there, and it's not in your head. You have to. There's too many things, man. And some people, and I feel like my list is very pared down compared to others, and there's still a ton of stuff on there. So you have to have it down, printed. It feels like every outdoor store has a gear list. There's plenty of websites that have gear lists. Some of them are better than others, but I think this is Captain Obvious. I think if you're starting off backpacking without any sort of a list, then that's not good.
Yeah.
So Justin apparently was so experienced, he was going without a gear list for a little bit, and it came back to bite him, so that's why that was at the forefront of his mind. All right. Next up, we got Steven Smith from My Life Outdoors. What is your best trip planning tip for those out there who are just trying to learn from pros like you?
I mean, what I like to do is I look at a map. So I like to look at a map, kind of see the big picture where I want to go. And I start looking at like potential destinations. And then I Google. So if it's like a lake or a river or a valley or whatever the case may be, then I start Googling pictures of whatever those places are.
Right.
And I try to figure out like, is this worth the effort to get to it? You know, because there's been a few times that I've like found something on a map and been like, oh, I want to go see what that is. And I get there and it's just terrible, you know, and I'm just like, man, I
wow. Where's that? Give us one of those places.
So there was a place called Thunder Lake, and I saw it on a map and I was like, I told my friend, I was like, hey, let's go check out this Thunder Lake. And he was like, okay. And so we spent pretty much all day getting there, and we got there and it was just a puddle of mud is all it was.
No.
Yeah. There was no lake. And so I wish I would have Googled that first and found out there was a puddle of mud.
That's a bummer. Jeez.
I think Thunder Lake would be cool too.
You would think. Yeah.
You would think. You would think.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think about this one?
This one, I've done this. We went to the Oregon Peak Trail in New Mexico for a day trip, and we actually were like, let's see which one, because there was different trails to do. And if you're doing a day trip or even a long trip, you want to see. So we went to all trails, and one guy was like, you need to bring a machete. And I was like, what? And I look at the pictures, and I mean, the trail was not really existent depending on stuff. So we went on and bought a machete, a $5 machete from Walmart, just to have. But
they sell $5 machetes?
Yeah, they're cheap there. And we wound up not having to use it because the trail, there's enough people that went through. So I don't know when these people went through, but we do look at the pictures to evaluate if it's worth the trip.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Have you done it?
Okay. Yeah, I've done research that way for sure. And it's actually kind of like what Steven was saying. Like, I've actually crossed areas off the list because I was like, yeah, that's not worth the effort to get there or the money or whatever. So I think this is a good tip. I think a lot of people will research it through YouTube and just through websites like I mentioned earlier, but actually clicking on the pictures to make sure it's a good spot, I think is key. So I'm going to say thumbs up on this tip.
Yeah, I like it.
Next up, we got Chef Corso. He was on back at, I think it was like the end of December. So here's his tip. All right, Chef Corso, we talked a little bit about this before, but do you have for us your top trip planning tip with all the places you've been, all the things you've done? Can you help us out with a trip planning tip?
Yeah, so a little bit more of my backstory too is I lived in Seattle for 12 years, but left in the middle of the pandemic. So I have been living and working on the road for over 4 years now. And get to travel around the country, teach workshops, and connect with folks, do some fun exploring, and then eat a lot of food, which is great. Got a lot of great regional food in this country. And, you know, the one thing that I have thought a lot about when I'm trip planning for a backpacking trip or even just a family vacation or a fun vacation is write out what you want to do and then take away one or two things. So basically do less. And
okay,
because you're going to San Diego to enjoy the sun, you're going to the national park to see all the things, and if you're just rushing through and trying to check everything off, you're not going to enjoy it as much as if you just rested a little bit. So you still need to see the things, you still need to go to Zion and get in there and see all the things that you can. But just take a little bit of a step back and maybe budget for, a half day or a day of nothing. And I'm sure you will find something to do with it, or you can just rest and read. I think we're all so busy these days with either our job or our families that we don't just spend time to be and enjoy where we are.
I feel like his is more of like travel tips. I don't know that he's picking up on the whole backpacking vibe. Yeah. But generally speaking, how would you rank his tip here?
I don't know if I take one or two things away. Usually I'm writing out what I want to do and then adding to it.
Yeah.
And I get what he was saying, because he's like, write out what you want to do, take one or two things away, because sometimes your trips are too busy.
Right.
And backpacking
trips are pretty linear for the most part.
But maybe so the one thing I'm thinking of is like, say there's a lake that's kind of out of the way, and we've done that where we
that's fair.
we went exploring for a lake, and it wound up just causing more of a headache because we couldn't find it. And,
Right.
So it kind of made it easier to just take this advice where it's like, yeah, let's not go and out of our way for a lake.
You're calling an audible on the spot. He's talking about make your list and then like erase things essentially ahead of time.
Yeah.
We've called audible specifically. Yeah, links I think a couple times, and I think actually one we called lake audibles twice on the same trip. So that's definitely a thing. But in terms of what you want to do while you're out there, you could cross them off pre and post trip. But I don't know about backpacking. There's not. I mean, you're just getting to camp, go for a swim. There's other things.
Yeah, maybe it's so for me, like we went to the Boundary Waters a couple of times, and we had a couple lakes that we wanted to go to, portaging, and we, once we got there, we're like, maybe we don't have time for this. But I think one of the things that's good is if you got a lot of people, it kind of brings us with our next, a couple of our tips coming up is if you get a lot of ideas out there, maybe you do cross off a couple. So if everyone has their different opinions about something, you cross it off. Or you know what? I mean, maybe you got too many people and you got to cross yourself off it. Carl, like
I'm happy to do that if there's too many people.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna give Chef Corso a thumbs up for a travel tip, but I think this is a thumbs down for backpacking tip. What do you say?
Yeah, agreed.
Next up, we got Harmon Hike. I have no idea how you say his last name. YouTuber, filmmaker. How do you say it, Ben?
I think it was Hoik.
Hoik? Okay, Harmon Hoik. So I just called him Harmon when he was on the show, and here's his tip.
So what is your best trip planning tip to get people to the best backpacking locations across the world?
So I would say it's custom Google Maps. So with Google Maps, you can create these custom maps where you can just add waypoints and load GPX files and just create your own custom Google Maps with a bunch of waypoints that you like. And especially if you go to places where there are like no developed multi-day hikes, just by sort of exploring an area and just finding, just searching the web and find as much information as you can, and putting it all in this map can really help you understand an area and see what kind of locations are interesting to see when you go hiking. And based on this map, you can very easily sort of find a nice route that you can do.
All right, so what do you think about this one? This one's kind of techie.
This one's techie. Using the map is great. Putting waypoints on there, I think, is good, so you know where you're going. And customizable map is good, so you can, we do that where after you go on a trip, we put like Rock Hill of Death, just so if we come back to a trail, we know it's there. So, I think customizing the map and putting different waypoints on there helps. But what do you think?
He said customize it not just with the waypoints and not just using GPX files, but it sounds like any information. So it could be like backcountry campsite or water source, any intel. I think this is the best tip so far. I think for people, especially that are very techie and really love to dig into trip planning, I think this is the one that's been the best one so far. So good job, Harmon.
Yeah, I like it.
All right. Okay, now we got Huck Outdoors. He was on our episode where we brought on the expert panel back in November, December.
So if you're going with a group, get everybody's insight because you want to make sure everybody's doing a trail or trip they want to do. There's been times where we're on a trip and say somebody is out there and you didn't get their insight and you start having a longer day than they thought they were going to, you're going to hear about it. Or they want to go on a side trip or something. You passed a cool site they wanted to see. You got to make sure you're getting everybody's insight on those trips. If it's for myself, the most important thing I'm basing my trips around is water. Where are the water locations? Are there springs? Are they reliable? Is there a creek there? Because in Southern California, that water is hard to find.
With getting everyone's insight, like, does that create problems? I mean, it seems like you got a good group of friends, but that doesn't always work when we're trying to coordinate 5-6 people. Everybody has a different opinion of like, well, I want to hike 10, I want to hike 20 miles a day and all that.
Get them, like the main people that are putting the hike together, get their input. If you got a group of 5 or 6, there's usually a couple of people that just they're just going to go along with whatever happens anyways. The three, like a couple people, main people, they're putting it together, get their insight, go with it.
So Huck is similar to us in that he goes with groups, so that gives him some credibility. What did you think about the whole getting everyone's insight before the trip?
I hate it. I hate it.
What? Why?
Well, I've done.
Why?
I think of mission trips. And I know it's different than backpacking, but even
Correct.
doing backpacking and canoe trips, you get everyone's insight. You're bound to just make somebody mad or upset because you're not choosing their idea. And so that's what I think of is you got, say, 10 people going or even 4, and everybody wants to do something else. I mean, you have it. We should do this trailhead. We should go this trailhead. Let's do this, and
Right.
I think that's hard. Now, if you're just talking about trip expectations, then it can be good. Like, hey, you've done that with miles. Hey, do you know we're putting in so many miles a day? Are you able to do that? And if they're not, then you gotta talk to them. But I think it's good.
I don't have the group of people, for the most part, that are so interested in the trip where I'm going to be kind of asking them what their expectations are for campsites, for locations. Because really, if they give just kind of general feedback, they might create a type of trip that just can't possibly exist. Well, we want campfires.
Right.
We don't want bear canisters. We want to be in the Sierras. We want, we don't want to see rangers. Like whatever it is, it can't exist. And so sometimes you just got to pick the spot and go for it and be like, well, this is what the trip's about, and give them the expectations of what the trail's going to be like and have them make the decision on whether they can go or not. But most of the guys that go with me aren't like they just show up. They're not, if I give them all the details, they're not going to even look at it.
Yeah. And I think with him, he was talking about going with like 3 or 4 guys that he's been going with forever. And so it's easier for them. Like, hey, what do we want to do? What's our expectations? Like what,
Yeah, but I have the same thing, man. I've been going with guys forever and they still don't care. They're just like, where are we going?
Yeah. And I think if you're new to trip planning, so if you're listening to this episode and you're new to trip planning, I would really be cautious about trying to get everyone's insight. You could ask one other guy, maybe 2 other people, but just know if you ask everybody, they're all going to be different. It's going to give you stress. It's going to give you a headache, and they're all, some people get mad that you didn't listen to their advice. So just be ready for that.
For sure. And here's what does tend to happen a lot is you might get somebody who's all in on the advice, and they're like, we should do this, 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 this. And you're like, ooh, I guess we could do that. And maybe you kind of bend to their ideas, and then they end up like canceling, not even going anyway. That's happened to me. So I'm not joking,
like
man. Like that
devious,
stuff drives me insane. They're like, well, here's what I think we should do. And they get on their high horse, and then they're like, actually, I can't make this trip.
I'm going to do that to you. I'm just going to be all in for a trip, get it planned, help you get excited, and then just be like, oh yeah, nope, sorry, I was just kidding the whole time. And I'm going to make you pay my permit fees. How about that?
Yeah, don't get me started on that. If you want more tips on that kind of stuff, we have 2 other Patreon episode onlys that we did for trip planning that we released back in January and February. And yeah, that'll kind of get into those details for sure. But yeah, I think if you're in Huck's position, I agree. Like he's in a good spot. He's got some good buddies. So I understand his perspective, but I think generally speaking, I'm going to go thumbs down on this tip.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, we got one last one from Dan Durston. Out on the trail, capability isn't optional. It's essential. That's why I'm using case knives. Built for whatever comes your way, these knives have been trusted for more than 100 years. On the job, in the wild, and even to the moon. Made with craftsmanship in Bradford, Pennsylvania, every case knife is a piece of American grit you can count on, whether you're splitting kindling, cutting paracord, or just cutting up some tape to take care of a blister. Case knives, every day capable. Do you struggle with joint pain, breathing at altitude, uneven terrain, or simple exhaustion? Then it's time to up your trail game, folks, with our good friend Roan from Summit Strength. He's got a specialized program that will be just right for you to conquer your next adventure. Don't be left behind by the group again. Get your hands off your knees, get your butt off the log, and feel good getting after it with Summit Strength. The link to your success is always in our episode description, but you can check out all the information you need at summitstrength.com.au/online. It's time to be strong and pain-free for your next adventure.
Yeah, I have a couple things that I do that help out. One of the big ones, it's kind of mundane, but helps out is so you go on a trip, you get home, and then you take like your Mankey gear and you like you maybe unpack it. But you don't really. You might have like a food bag full of wrappers that kind of are getting gross. Maybe you throw your clothes in the laundry, but you don't like put your hiking gear back. And it's the easiest to do in like the first little bit because you know kind of what needs to go back in and what needs to be done. But if you just sort of throw your backpack and make this sort of gross, unpacked, disorganized mess,
Yeah.
then next time you want to go hiking, you have to sort of reverse all that. So I don't really do this. This is more aspirational than something I properly execute. But if you actually had the discipline to basically just reset once you got back home, then it would just be so much easier if you knew that your stuff was, you didn't have to go hunting all over for everything and where did I put my battery bank and where did I put my, all this kind of stuff. So I would sort of like say, a reset when you get home really helps you get out for the next time. So is this tips for beginners on making it easier to get out?
That's a really good question. So here's what we found just being podcast hosts for a while now, is that this could be for beginners because we have beginners that listen, but we also have people that are kind of afraid to go someplace new, or they kind of just like stick close to home. And I know you mentioned you do that too, but you've been all over the place. Some people haven't. They're like, it's very daunting to them. So any tip at all really hits a lot of people, to be honest.
Something that works for me. So I've been all over. I would go all over. I love the Canadian Rockies so much. I'm just like, I gotta do all these trails. So it's like, why am I going to fly to Australia when I'm more stoked about the trail like 20 minutes away? But something that helps for me anyways is that I find if you're doing your research in a written format, it's very hard to catalog that. It's like you read about trails, you're like the Tour de Mont Blanc or something like that. It's like, okay, like here's 10 tips and stay in this hut and book your permits here, but it's all like text based.
Right.
It's so hard to like catalog and comprehend and really appreciate that. I like to do more of a kind of a spatial based. I'll use like a mapping software. Like there's free ones. I use Caltopo and Gaia. So if I want to do the Tour de Mont Blanc, which maybe I'll do someday, I have no immediate plans, but if you put the trail on the map, like you can just go to the page or you could download GPS, so put it on the map, and then you might look at how you're going to get there, and you could actually do a line for like, here's the road, here's the airport, and then you learn about hostels. You're like, oh, like this hostel, put a dot, like this hostel is awesome, this restaurant's awesome. You're putting all the information, cataloging it spatially rather than a written format. And then I just find it so much easier to sort of understand, and somebody suggests a restaurant that you end up being like 20 miles off road, you're just like, well, I'm not going to do that. Yeah,
so you have like a visual of it. It's not just like a list, like, oh, here. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? You actually have, you're seeing the contour lines. If you're using the apps, you're getting the stats along the way as well.
People say this pass is scary. You can look at it and be like, okay, I'm going to book my camp right after that pass. Then I can see, get down the hill and there it is and all that. So that works for me pretty well on complicated things. Like I was maybe going to do some guiding with Andrewskorka in Alaska, and it's like the gates of the Arctic. It's huge. You're kind of like, oh, we're flying on this airline into this little town and this and that. And it's like, if you just like put some points on the map and then maybe draw point, and you're like, okay, I could see we're going from here to here. And it starts to just like, I'm sure everyone learns differently, but for me, I think I'm a little more spatial. So that helps a lot.
Are you surprised that Dan might just throw his wet, dirty, stinky gear in the corner and just leave it there? Does that surprise you a little bit?
No, I do that.
No. It doesn't surprise me that you do that. I'm asking if it surprises you that Dan does that.
I think it does. I mean, but maybe he just is like, well, if it gets moldy, I'll just make myself a new one,
That's true. He's like, whatever.
Whatever. I'll just get the newest model next year.
Yeah. So does this tip help you? You're the kind of guy who comes home, if something comes up, you're busy, you don't have time to unpack, to air out your tent, to throw your clothes in the wash, whatever. So something's more important, apparently. Does this motivate you to be better at this?
It does.
Okay.
It totally does, because I did this after one of our trips. I didn't wash my tent and had a quick, I think middle of an episode, me and you were talking about it, and my eyes went huge, and I went out later that day and took care of the tent. And I'm still unpacking my backpack from the last trip as well.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I mean, I take out the dirty clothes. Like, I know to take out the dirty clothes and all that, but most of the stuff, like the dehydrated foods. I got some wipes in there still, and it just stays in there because I'm going to use it again. Why unpack it, right?
Yeah, why would you unpack things that can grow mold and mildew and all that stuff?
No,
right?
you're using it again.
If you're using it fast, of course you can figure it out. But if it's months after the fact, okay.
Yeah.
I think this is generally a good tip. I don't know. I think most people that care about their gear are gonna do this.
Right.
Most people. I think this tip is targeted to maybe like newer or younger backpackers who aren't mindful about that stuff and don't realize that their really expensive tent could get wrecked just through bad storage. So that's
right. I mean, everything. I mean, like how many times have you opened up stuff and mice got into it?
I've never had mice get into my backpacking gear. Have you?
Well, I got a lot of cats. No, I got a lot of cats, so we have no mice issues.
That's a different
I think it happens.
issue.
It used to for us.
Okay, so any final thoughts about all these different tips from the pros, from the experts?
I think were we 4 of them and against the other 4. So
something like that.
Yeah. So hopefully everyone's learned something here, and you guys can take away something good. And if we rambled on about something, hopefully you got some insight anyways. So we're here to help.
Speaking of rambling.
Yeah.
I think my takeaway is that be very careful with who you're trusting out there in terms of content providers, websites, and so on, because I think that there's a lot of folks that really do know how to go solo backpacking, but that doesn't mean that they can provide tips for you as a group backpacking planner and leader. I think that they might know their stuff in areas of just general backpacking knowledge or gear, but trip planning is a different animal. And I don't know that I'm going to trust every backpacker I see on YouTube out there with trip planning tips, is all I'm trying to say.
Agreed. I totally agree. There's people that I wouldn't even trust leading. They're friends of mine.
Yeah. And can you trust us? Well, that's questionable too, because we have about 8 years worth of mess ups that we've chronicled on this podcast. So you can decide if even our advice is worthwhile. But I just think that you got to kind of I don't know. Like I would trust a mountain guide over a YouTuber is all I'm trying to say. So
yeah, agreed.
All right, my friend, you got anything else?
Just remember, if you're trip planning, don't trip it up.
Have a great week and God bless everyone.
I want to fly around the world.
Yo, backpacking and blisters, it's Rock. And obviously, first, thank you to everybody continuing to pray for Jennifer, for my family, for myself, my parents, her sister, these people that are really working so hard on her behalf to make sure all this paperwork is filled out, make sure that she's got all the care that she needs, that are coordinating their schedules with me. Thank you for all the prayers for all of us. Praise God for y'all. I'm going to keep praying for as many of you guys as possible. And then second, there are times in life where people give you advice that you don't need because you already know exactly what they're talking about, or you know more than what they're saying. So, it's quite a quandary in some ways, because when I was younger, for instance, if somebody would give me advice that I already knew or that I had down, the younger Rock, the less patient, less developed in Christ Rock, and not to say that I'm much farther along now, but by God's grace, I pray that I am. This would be my way of handling it back then. Hey, thanks. Yeah, kept it short and simple. There was something to the short and simple, maybe not quite to the effect that I had, though, when I was speaking. Maybe not the verbiage that I was looking for, right? There are a lot of people that will give you advice that you don't need because you already know it, that you probably could safely say to you, hey, thanks for the advice, appreciate it, and then just leave it at that. But then if they continue to speak, right, if they just keep going, now we're going with, hey, thanks again, appreciate it, but I already know that, and let's talk about something else, right? Get to the point again. But hopefully that's a little bit nicer. God bless you all. Thank you again for the prayers. And have wisdom with those people that are giving you unwarranted advice. Peace.